Hello, it's Big Cheds. We're doing My Battles with Cancer, a candid patient and caregiver memoir. Today, or right now, I'm recording the chapter. Okay, let's hear the news. And it's essentially going to the hospital and getting my diagnosis. So, this is My Battles with Cancer. I want the entire book to be available for free to anybody who it may help. I'm a cancer patient and a caregiver, having gone through both of those. I have a lot of insights to share, and this is why I'm doing this. My other books are Trading Wisdom and Trading Quotes, available on Amazon Kindle, hardcover, audiobook, and paperback format. I'm, of course, Big Cheds on Twitter and Cheds Trading on YouTube. You're here right now, so you know that. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's hear the news. We arrived at the hospital early on Monday morning for my appointment, and I was given a new plastic patient bracelet. I removed my old bracelet now that I had a new one, and then I went to have my blood drawn. For this visit, I was joined by my wife and my older sister. I was especially thankful to have someone with her medical expertise in my corner. As a metaphor, it's like having an ace defense attorney in the family when you are on trial. For me, waiting really was the hardest part because I did not know what to expect. I was not able to plan my future until I knew exactly what was wrong with me. That was incredibly frustrating. There's a saying in life to prepare for the worst and to hope for the best, but I did not even dare hope for the best at this point. So I had prepared for the worst. Deep down inside, I knew that I would fight hard if I did have cancer, and that confidence helped me to keep the fear at bay as we awaited those biopsy results. As we sat and waited patiently for the doctor, the suspense got to me, and I began pacing all around the room. The moment was so big that I was unable to just sit and calmly wait for this life-changing news. Soon enough, the doctor walked into the room, and he shook my hand, and then warmly said hello to my wife and sister as well. Then he asked me to sit on the table so he could perform a physical examination. As he had for the prior visit, the doctor took a closer look at the lymph node in my left armpit, and then he checked the rest of my body to see if there were any new enlarged lymph nodes. He also pushed around my abdomen area, trying to find that second potentially cancerous lymph node. Even though I couldn't feel anything, based on his feedback, he apparently had no problem locating it. After the doctor finished his examination, I returned to my seat to hear the diagnosis, hoping to end the speculation once and for all. Drum roll. Based on the core needle biopsy, the doctor diagnosed me with stage 3 diffuse large B-cell non-Hodgkin lymphoma, or DLBCL. After I asked the doctor what stage 3 meant, he laid out the staging system for this type of cancer. Stage 1 is when the cancer is only found in one lymph node region. Stage 2 is when the cancer is found in 2 or more areas on one side of the diaphragm or inside an organ. Stage 3, which I had, is when you have cancer in lymph nodes on both sides of the diaphragm. In this case, or in my case rather, the left armpit and right abdomen. Stage 4, which thankfully I did not have, is when the cancer is on both sides of the diaphragm and has spread to an organ. When I heard the doctor say definitively that I had cancer, it was not as much of a shock as it might have otherwise been, since I had already prepared myself for it. He then explained that my cancer was considered aggressive, given that it had already spread to both sides of my diaphragm and was rapidly growing. To give you a sense of how aggressive my cancer was, each tumor had grown almost 2 centimeters in a matter of weeks. The doctor then proceeded to give his recommendation for treatment, which was systemic chemotherapy. There are two types of chemotherapy, systemic and local. Systemic is when the medicine goes all throughout your body in an attempt to find the cancer cells wherever they are. And local chemotherapy is when the medicine is delivered to a specific area of your body to attack the cancer cells there. The bottom line was that I had a serious blood cancer, and the doctor believed that the best way to deal with it was systemic chemotherapy. The 6 sessions of chemotherapy he was prescribing me would possibly be followed up with radiation therapy. The determining factor would be how well my body handled the chemotherapy and what impact that medicine had on the cancerous cells. As the doctor elaborated on the treatment and what it would do to my body, I just sat there taking it all in. I had already prepared myself for the worst case. Having confidence in my medical team and confidence in myself, I knew that I was going to fight and beat this cancer. After all, I was in an excellent cancer hospital and was otherwise a healthy middle-aged man. You bet I felt pretty good about my chances. What happened next was an incredibly important moment in my journey and was the first step in teaching me a valuable lesson. The doctor reached out and handed me a box of tissues. And that caught me off guard since I was neither crying nor showing any signs of distress. And then I turned around to look at my wife and I saw that her entire face was covered with tears. I suddenly realized that there were people other than me that this cancer was going to affect. This was not the time to go down a rabbit hole of self-pity where I only thought about my own problems. Knowing that I had others around me who were also affected helped to keep me from just wallowing in my misery. I had to be strong for them. There were other moments as well throughout my treatment and recovery period that helped to reinforce this lesson, but that moment was by far the most powerful one for me. The doctor returned to explaining the course of my treatment plan, and he then touched on some of the side effects I would have to deal with along the way. However, none of those side effects he described really worried me that much because I planned on using THC and CBD medicines to lessen their impact. Curious, I asked the doctor if he knew my prognosis before Thanksgiving, and he said that in fact he did, but he chose to wait until after the holiday to give me the results. I think that was probably a smart move on his end, as the delay gave me the chance to enjoy that holiday while I was still holding on to some hope that I did not have cancer. My wife and I continued to ask some more follow-up questions, and then we wrapped up the appointment on as positive a note as we could. We talked about just how lucky I was to have such a great support system around me. As we got up to leave, the doctor remarked, "The only question you haven't asked me is what your chances are." And I confidently replied, "I figured my chances were near 100% since I have the best medical care in the world and I will be using the best medical grade cannabis available anywhere." This answer made the doctor smile. And then he gave me his answer, which was 85%. It was so strange to think of my life as being on a probability scale. As a longtime poker player, I knew that 85% is a really good chance to win, but it can easily be beaten. I have seen those odds play out against me many times before at the poker table. Looking down upon my wrist and carefully examining that plastic hospital bracelet, I was once again reminded that I was now a patient and I would have to make major lifestyle changes. To prepare for this battle, this potentially life-ending battle, it was important to cultivate the right spirit. Wearing that bracelet every day was a way to remind myself to take care of my health as best as I could. The trip back home from the hospital was overwhelmingly emotional for me, but I was not the only one. As we made our way home, I watched my wife and closely studied her face. From my observations, I was struck by just how much pain she seemed to be in. Given that I was in a deep and complex, all-encompassing pain, I could empathize with her. Washing through me were feelings of being dirty, shock, confusion, shame, fear, and pretty much anything else that you can imagine. However, all I had to do was look at my wife, and I was quickly reminded that I had to be strong for her. There was a cloak of complete despondence and despair about her. Though I was the one who had just been diagnosed with a life-threatening disease, I really felt for her and what she was going through. She lost some family members when she was much younger, and now her husband had just been diagnosed with a potentially terminal disease. Being aware of and attentive to her feelings helped me to slow down and helped me from getting lost in my own despair. For most of the rest of the drive, I was just anxious to get home, to put on my headphones and to take a long walk to help sort some things out. Often, while I'm out for a walk, I find myself stumbling upon the solution to a difficult problem I had previously filed away for later consideration. This cancer diagnosis was the ultimate puzzle, and I would need to use all of my higher brain functions to figure out the proper solution. More or less, in need of all the intuition and creativity I could muster, a long walk was just what the doctor ordered. As soon as we got home, I told my wife I really needed to be alone, and I would be gone for a few hours. Layering up to stay warm, I grabbed my headphones and my vaporizer pen, and I set off for that long walk. My music of choice for deep thinking is Baroque classical, and so I fired up some Vivaldi, starting with a movement from La Cetra, which is wonderful, by the way. With this music, I was able to tap directly into my raw feelings, and I let out a long and deep cry as the emotions poured through me like water through a pasta strainer. I've always believed that we must face our emotions head on to pass through them. If you avoid these difficult feelings, they will just fester up and burst out when you are not ready or able to deal with them. By exploring these challenging emotions in the moment when they were raw, I was being as honest as I could with myself. This approach gave me the best shot to find some peace in my situation. Now that I had gotten a little bit of the emotion out of my system, I was able to gather enough composure to call some friends and share the news with them. After talking to a few of my closest friends and telling them that I had cancer, I called an old buddy. This friend sat next to me during college graduation, and I hadn't spoken to him in quite a while. Before I could mention my cancer diagnosis, he told me that his father had just died. This news stunned me, and I immediately consoled him, not really knowing what to say other than offering my sympathies. Hearing this devastating news really shook me back into reality and out of my moment of despair, at least for a little while. When you're diagnosed with something as deadly as lymphoma, it's easy to become obsessed with your own condition and to not think about anyone else. That phone call with my friend, along with the moment where my wife was handed a box of tissues from the doctor, really helped me to keep from going down a rabbit hole of endless self-pity. Once I bid my friend farewell, I continued my walk, heading back in the direction of home. Progressing along my way, I slowly returned to thinking about my own problems. However, something was different now as I was looking at my life from more of a 30,000-foot view. After hearing the news about my friend's father, I was able to now step outside of my situation, and that helped me to dial down the emotion just a bit so I could think more clearly. As I plodded my way down the street, I thought intensely about why this had happened to me, and I considered that perhaps my diet was not right or that I had not worked hard enough in some other way to stay healthy. The effort to figure out why I had cancer was absolutely futile, as even the doctors couldn't tell me where it came from. That fact did not stop me, however, from speculating and from blaming myself, of course, trying to search for some greater cosmic meaning. The castle of invulnerable health I had built up for myself was now crumbling as I struggled to make sense of my new reality. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wanted to blame myself because if I did, that meant that I was still in charge of my destiny. This was more palatable than everything being the result of bad luck or some scary and unknown thing that I couldn't control. Walking some more, I thought about chemotherapy and how I was determined not to lose my hair during treatment. I was fully convinced that by using CBD and THC, I would somehow be able to keep my hair, even though every single chemotherapy drug I would be taking had the side effect of losing hair. I still, though, refused to give in and to let that cancer win without a fight. As I continued to walk, I thought a lot about how my lifestyle would have to change so I could properly prepare my body for the side effects of chemotherapy. I've always enjoyed drinking red wine, and I needed to give that up because alcohol weakens the immune system. My body was going to be extremely vulnerable during treatment, and that's something that I was going to have to take seriously. An oversimplified way of how chemotherapy works is that it zaps your body to kill the cancer cells, and then your body slowly recovers. As a doctor explained to us, about a week after each chemotherapy session, the strength of the patient's immune system is greatly reduced, eventually reaching what is called nadir. Nadir is the point in each chemotherapy cycle when blood counts are at their lowest and the patient is most vulnerable to disease or infection. According to the medical dictionary, nadir is the lowest point after the blood count has been depressed by chemotherapy. As part of my daily routine in life, I had been using both THC and CBD medicines to help me recover from a major knee surgery, as well as for daily health maintenance. And due to my use of these wonderful medicines, I had not needed to use any of the pharmaceutical painkillers from the hospital to recover from my knee surgery. After going under the knife, the inflammation in my knee also went down much faster than was expected due to these wonderful medicines. Based on what I had read online, I knew it would be critically important for me to use THC and CBD to help manage the side effects of chemotherapy. I wanted to continue using them during treatment, but I needed to find a different delivery method to get those medicines into my body. Smoking a joint or using a glass bowl was out of the question. The reason for this is the potential for spores to develop and harm my lungs were I ingesting smoke. I probably would have been okay just using a dry vaporizer or concentrates with a vape pen, but I decided to switch to an all-edible and sublingual, which means applied under the tongue, basically drops, delivery method. I ended up leaning heavily on tincture drops. Knowing that not everyone is as lucky as I am so incredibly thankful that I had easy access to these high-quality medicines. And also, I had the option of changing up my delivery method without sacrificing any quality or medical benefit. In addition to THC and CBD, I had also been taking Adderall for ADHD. And in the past, it really helped me to stay focused and productive. However, given that one of the chemotherapy drugs I was prescribed caused short-term and potentially even long-term damage to my heart, I decided to cut out Adderall as well, as that caused my heart rate to increase. One of the chemotherapy drugs I was set to take, was so powerful that the doctor wanted me to have an EKG first to make sure I could even handle it. Generally speaking, anything that made my heart pump faster was out. So besides Adderall, I also cut out all other stimulants, including coffee. That's right. I even quit coffee during chemotherapy, something that we all know is nearly impossible to give up. I joke, of course, but coffee at this point had been a key part of my morning routine for years, and it's not as easy as you would think to give it up. One of the first things I did when I got back home from that long walk was to let my followers on Twitter know that I was facing this battle, even though it was scary to announce to the entire world that I had cancer. I was in need of some sympathy, and I wanted to feel the well wishes and good vibes that I hoped my followers would send me. Proudly, I declared, I will beat my stage 3 cancer. And suddenly it felt like everything had changed. There was no more playing around. Having broadcast this message, I knew that there was no going back because my followers were going to hold me accountable. I also knew that they would be there to support me along the way. Putting it out there was a big step towards accepting what I had been dealt with and towards finding the courage necessary to fight and to win this battle. Quote, I will beat my stage 3 cancer. November 27th, 2017 at Big Cheds. It's really easy to feel alone, all alone in the world when you are diagnosed with a terrible disease like cancer. Connecting with others and having them share their wisdom and experience can make a huge difference. As soon as I announced on Twitter that I had cancer, I was flooded with stories of inspiration and of hope and compassion. One major reason I decided to write this book was that I received so much wonderful encouragement and love from random strangers that I wanted to return the favor by sharing my story and experiences. And that's what I'm doing today. Facing the unknown treatment. Next chapter is me talking about going through chemotherapy, what it's like to go through chemotherapy. This is my battles with cancer, a patient and caregiver's candid memoir. I published it in 2020. I spent 2023 rewriting it and recording the audiobook, all available now on Amazon. I've also published 2 other books, Trading Wisdom. It's been done really well, and I'm very proud of that. And I love this book, Trading Quotes. Very proud of that as well. I'm, of course, Big Cheds. On Twitter, you can find me there doing my thing pretty much every day. And I'm on YouTube at Cheds Trading. That's where you're watching this video now. I really wanted to get this book out. I wanted to get this book available to everybody. So that's what we're doing today. And thank you for listening. And I will talk to you soon.